At 30,000 feet, flight attendant Jesse notices something unusual about the boy in 14B. His father remains absorbed in his laptop, oblivious to his son's growing discomfort. As Jesse serves drinks, she spots angry red marks spreading across the boy's trembling hands. When the strange smell reaches the cockpit, the pilot's face turns pale. What the crew discovered inside his backpack shocked even veteran FBI agents. The morning started like any other for Jesse Martinez. After 20 years as a flight attendant, she had her pre-flight routine down to a science. Coffee, uniform check, crew briefing. As she stood at the gate of United Airlines Flight 247 from Chicago to Seattle, she thought about how every flight told its own story. Today's would prove more memorable than most. The boarding process began normally. Jesse watched the usual mix of business travelers and tourists file past. Some were already lost in their phones, others struggling with oversized carry-ons. That's when she noticed them, a man in an expensive business suit, typing furiously on his laptop, while his young son trailed behind. The contrast between them was striking. The father laser-focused on his screen, the boy clutching a worn backpack to his chest, eyes darting nervously around the terminal. "Welcome aboard," Jesse smiled at the boy, but he ducked his head and hurried past. The father barely broke stride, absorbed in whatever was on his screen. Something about their dynamic nagged at Jesse's instincts, but she pushed the thought aside. After all, she had a plane full of passengers to attend to. The pre-flight checks went smoothly. Jesse moved through her safety demonstration with practiced ease, though she noticed the boy in 14B was the only child actually watching. Most kids his age were usually glued to tablets or games, but this one seemed different, more alert, almost anxious. The first hour of the flight passed routinely enough. Jesse moved through the cabin with practiced efficiency, serving drinks and responding to call buttons, but something kept drawing her attention back to seat 14B. The boy hadn't touched his apple juice. He sat rigidly in his seat, hands folded in his lap, while his father continued working on what sounded like business presentations. At first, she dismissed his behavior as typical childhood restlessness. Flying could be stressful for kids, especially with the pressure changes and confined space. The divorce vibes she was picking up from the situation probably weren't helping either, but as she passed their row again, she caught a glimpse of something that made her pause mid-step. The boy was rubbing his hands together, over and over, as if trying to shake off an invisible substance. His movements seemed urgent, almost desperate. His father remained absorbed in his laptop, muttering pitch points under his breath. Third quarter projection, market penetration, synergistic opportunities. Jesse's instincts, honed by thousands of flights and countless passenger interactions, told her something wasn't right. She approached their row, careful to keep her voice casual. "Can I get either of you anything? Maybe some cookies for the young man?" The boy quickly pulled his hands under his blanket. His father barely glanced up from his screen. "He's fine, just anxious about flying, we don't need anything." The dismissive tone made Jesse's concern deepen, but she had caught a glimpse of the boy's palms before they disappeared. They were an angry shade of red, with strange marks spreading across the skin. The sight sent a chill down her spine. In all her years of flying, she'd never seen anything quite like it. As she continued her rounds, she kept a subtle watch on row 14. The boy's discomfort seemed to be growing. His quiet whimpers were barely audible over the engine noise, but they caught Jesse's trained ear. She noticed his backpack partially unzipped under the seat, a colorful box visible inside. The zipper's constant movement suggested he kept reaching for something, then thinking better of it. Something about the situation felt deeply wrong. The father's dismissive attitude, the boy's obvious distress, the strange marks on his hands. Jesse had learned to trust her instincts in this job. They'd helped her handle everything from medical emergencies to security threats. And right now, those instincts were screaming that this wasn't just a case of flight anxiety. She made her way to the galley where Sarah Chen, the head flight attendant, was preparing for the next service. In hushed tones, Jesse shared her concerns. "There's something off about the situation in 14B. The boy's hands, they don't look right. And his father won't even look up from his laptop." Sarah had been flying even longer than Jesse. She listened carefully, then went to inform Captain Rogers in the cockpit. That's when another detail emerged, a strange chemical smell wafting from the direction of row 14, not strong enough to alarm most passengers, but noticeable to the trained noses of the flight crew. The smell changed everything. Any unknown substance in a pressurized cabin at 30,000 feet could spell disaster. Captain Rogers immediately contacted ground control, describing the situation. The response was immediate and unequivocal. The FBI needed to be involved due to potential hazardous materials on board. Tension rippled through the cabin as two air marshals revealed themselves, moving purposefully toward row 14. The other passengers watched with a mixture of curiosity and concern, as one marshal began questioning the boy while his partner dealt with the increasingly agitated father. "This is ridiculous!" the father protested, his laptop finally forgotten. "We're going to be late for my meeting. I have a crucial presentation to the board this afternoon. There's nothing wrong." But his son's face told a different story. Tears welled up in his eyes as he clutched his backpack tighter. Jesse approached slowly, kneeling beside his seat. "We just want to help," she said softly. "Can you tell us what's bothering your hands?" The boy's resistance crumbled under Jesse's gentle questioning. His quiet confession silenced everyone within earshot. Last week had been his birthday, he explained. His mother had given him a chemistry set, something he'd been begging for all year. He'd spent hours at her house conducting supervised experiments, learning about reactions and compounds. He'd been so excited to show his father the experiments during their weekend together. But his father had been busy with work calls since picking him up at his mother's house. While his dad was on a long business call in the airport terminal, the boy had slipped into the bathroom with his chemistry set. With trembling hands, he unzipped his backpack. Inside was a colorful box labeled, "Junior Scientist Chemistry Set." But what caught everyone's attention was the leaking Ziploc bag containing an unknown mixture. The acrid smell grew stronger as the bag was revealed. Captain Rogers made the decision to divert to Minneapolis-St. Paul International Airport. As hazmat teams boarded the plane in their protective gear, the full story emerged. The boy had tried recreating an experiment he'd done successfully at his mother's house. But this time, something had gone wrong. The chemicals had reacted differently, creating a mild acid that burned his hands. Michael, the father, sat in stunned silence as medical teams treated his son's chemical burns. The reality of what could have happened, what he'd failed to notice while focused on his presentation, hit him hard. His son could have been seriously injured, all while he sat inches away, lost in his work. The other passengers were evacuated to the terminal while the hazmat team secured the chemistry set. Some grumbled about the delay, but most cast sympathetic glances at the father and son. Through the terminal windows they could see emergency vehicles surrounding the plane, their lights flashing against the gray Minneapolis sky. In the terminal, as FBI agents concluded their investigation, Michael broke down. He admitted to being overwhelmed by his recent divorce and increased work responsibilities. He'd been so focused on proving himself at work, on showing everyone he could handle both his career and single parenthood, that he'd lost sight of what mattered most, his son. The incident served as a wake-up call. The chemical burns would heal, leaving no permanent damage, but the experience left lasting marks on both father and son. Michael requested family leave from work, promising to use the time to rebuild his relationship with his son. Sometimes it takes a crisis at 30,000 feet to bring us back down to earth and remind us what truly matters. Jessie would never forget that flight. It reminded her why she always trusted her instincts, why she never dismissed a child's distress as mere nervousness. Years later, she would receive a card from Michael and his son. Inside was a photo of them together at a science museum, both smiling broadly. The boy was holding up a certificate from his school science fair. His father's laptop was nowhere in sight. And have you ever been so focused on something that you missed what was happening right in front of you?